Hello everyone, I'm Arunima from Knit and Knotter, and today I'm here to share my 2025 blanket cal with you all. This is the Sona blanket cal, and it is made up of 70 squares, which are each made with a different Blackwork inspired Tunisian crochet design. Now, I have been asked this a lot this year in 2024, that how would I top the IPSA blanket, because people have loved it so much, and I love it too. But I really don't think I can top that. I just wanted to offer something new, something challenging, something creative that would get you just as excited as the IPSA blanket cal. So hopefully this is that for you. It was for me. It was quite a challenge to develop this technique. Once the idea popped into my head, it uh, it was much harder to actually get it into a form that I could actually use and then also share it with everyone. You have seen the Sona blanket now, and you can see the final result. I'm really, really pleased with it. So the name Sona comes from Hindi, where it means gold. So gold is Sona in Hindi, and that's where the name comes from. It's based on the colors that I've used for my blanket. So I really liked the name, and it fit perfectly with the colors and the blankets. So that's why I chose to call it Sona. Um, these are so this blanket is made with the Tunisian mosaic crochet technique, and I'm going to explain a little bit later how this is different from the technique that I had shared in my 2023 blanket cal. It is significantly different. I'll just share what the differences are a little bit later. So now to give you a backstory about how this blanket came about and how this technique came about, I was in a local library a very long time ago. This was before I started designing Tunisian crochet patterns or crochet patterns in general. And I came across a Blackwork embroidery book. I've always been interested in different kinds of crafts, so finding something new was very interesting. I didn't end up using it for anything. I didn't end up creating any Blackwork embroidery, but that idea stayed with me. And as I've been exploring more Tunisian crochet, Tunisian mosaic crochet, it just sort of worked out in my head. It felt like I would be able to create Blackwork inspired designs with Tunisian mosaic crochet. And all I can say is that after a lot of trial and error, after a lot of practice, it did come together eventually. Now, I did have to develop this technique from scratch. I did not see this done anywhere else. So any videos that you see for this technique would likely be mine, at least right now. Now, let me start by talking about the technique. It is so Blackwork embroidery is done on an existing fabric. So you have the fabric, the tension is all sorted out. You create your Blackwork embroidery on top of that. But with Tunisian crochet, when you're creating Blackwork designs with Tunisian crochet, you're building the designs and the fabric together. So you have to be very careful about the tension, and that's something that I will talk about later. But that is how the designs are very different. The designs are built differently, or the projects are built differently than what you do in Blackwork embroidery. And this technique is, even though it's Tunisian mosaic crochet, you'd work with one color in a single row. You will not cut and rejoin yarn after every row. These are the similarities with the blanket cal of 2023. That's the Zuri blanket cal. But the stitches, there are additional stitches in this technique to be able to accommodate the diagonals that are there in Blackwork designs. And I developed this in a way that you would not have to create new crochet charts. So you could actually just pick any Blackwork embroidery chart that you like and use that to create your Tunisian mosaic crochet patterns. So the idea was to be able to easily create Blackwork designs or pick up any existing designs that you really like and just be able to use those and create your mosaic crochet patterns. So hopefully you will enjoy this. This is it's actually very easy to create Blackwork designs. So during this cal, I'm going to talk about that as well, and I just hope that you will have a lot of fun doing this. Now, the release schedule of the cal is on my blog. I have to say that this is the longest release schedule that I've had, or the most dense release schedule that I've had across all my CALs so far. The reason for that is there are 70 little bits and pieces that I have to release, and we will have releases every week, multiple squares sometimes. So this will require a lot of your time. I wanted to put it out there in advance that this is going to be, even though it's going to be not as fast paced, we'll still do releases week after week, and the entire CAL will last a full year. But it will require a significant time investment every week if you want to if you want to make the entire blanket. So it's I would recommend putting more effort in the beginning. There is a bit of a learning curve, so if you put in the effort in the beginning, focus on getting the stitches right, and you understand the technique, then it gets much easier as you go further. Now, the CAL starts on January 7th, when I will share the general information and the practice square. The practice square is also going to work as the gauge swatch for your pattern. So those will be released on January 7th, and the last part of the CAL will be released on November 25th, which is just before Thanksgiving break. And all of the squares, the large squares, the small squares, and the joining and border instructions, all of them are spread across throughout the year. This year, I'm doing something different with respect to the border, and it took me quite a bit of time to create the border. So I'm not going to release the border instructions in the end. I'm going to release them a little bit in advance, and you can work on the border independent of the squares. So it's also a separate piece that is joined later with the squares. So that's something you can do a little bit in advance if you wanted to. So that's why I'm not going to be releasing the border instructions in the end. The instructions will be released every Tuesday at 10 a.m. AEST, which is Melbourne time. That's where I live. So the instructions will be released at 10 a.m. my time, and the full release schedule is on the blog. So please go check it out. This is going to be a free CAL. So just like my earlier CALs, the pattern will be available for free on my website. So the pattern will consist of written instructions. There will be charts. So there will be two kinds of charts. One is a Blackwork embroidery chart that you can just create, pick up, and I will teach you how to use it. But there is another kind of chart where you can mark the extended stitches on it. So you convert a Blackwork embroidery chart into another, which is slightly easier to follow for your Tunisian mosaic designs. And that one will be available for download for 24 hours after the release, and which you're welcome to download. There will be a list of supplies. There will be video support. I just like my previous CALs, I will have support for every step. There will be that will be free on my ad-supported YouTube channel. So I will mention this later, but there is a course that I offer for this technique, which is not required because there will be videos which I think will be sufficient to work on the CAL. So there's that. And also, there will not be one video per square. So I will have a generic video that explains the technique, that explains how to read charts. There'll be videos that will explain how to read a chart and create a practice swatch from that. But I will not have individual videos for every square. Now, there will also be paid versions available to purchase. There are multiple options. I'm going to talk about those in a little bit. Now, the downloads are easy to miss sometimes, so I strongly recommend that either you mark your calendars, go through the schedule and mark your calendars so you do not miss the downloads. You could also sign up to my emails. I'm going to send a notification every time a new release happens. You could follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm going to post there. You can join my Facebook group for support, which I strongly recommend if you are on Facebook. That it is, again, it's not required, but we have a great community there where everybody is always willing to help each other. And that's a great support group. And because of the time difference, there are a lot of times that I am not available at the time that you have your questions. And there's a lot of people in the community who are always willing to help each other. So you might be able to get an answer even before I get to the question. So I strongly recommend that. If you are on Facebook, please join my Facebook group. And you can also follow my Pinterest board. So I'm offering updates at multiple places. So whatever works for you, just make sure that you join that and follow me, because I'm going to be doing releases pretty much every week throughout the year, next year, until the cal ends. Now, let's talk about the purchase option. So I am offering the pattern for purchase at two places. One is Ravelry and one is a non-Ravelry platform, which is ThriveCart. So in Ravelry, there is only one option. You can just buy the full pattern, which is all 70 squares. So there's 70 squares, there's 25 large squares, 44 small squares, that's 69 squares that make up the blanket. And then there's one additional square, which is the practice swatch, which I've not actually used in the blanket itself, but that's a total of 70 squares. That's what the pattern comes with. And you can purchase that from Ravelry. But I'm offering multiple options through ThriveCart. So ThriveCart is a place where I can play around a bit and offer you some discounts on my other products. So if you purchase the pattern on ThriveCart, there are three options. You can purchase just the large squares. You can purchase the entire pattern like on Ravelry. And there's a third option where you can purchase the full pattern with ad-free videos. So you won't have to watch the videos on YouTube, which is my channel with ad support. So if you wanted ad-free videos, then you can purchase the option without ads, and all of that is through ThriveCart. And I have discounts available for if you wanted to purchase my Blackwork with Tunisian Mosaic crochet course. And all of this information I've put it in a table, so you can go check out my website and see what the differences are. I think it makes most sense to purchase from ThriveCart if you wanted the ad-free version, and if you wanted to purchase the course with it, because that's where the biggest savings would be. So if you have any questions about this, if you needed help with figuring out what the right option for purchase for you is, then I'm happy to help. But please know that none of the purchases are required. Everything that you need for this cal will also be available for free. Now, that was mostly about the cal. Let's talk about the blanket itself. So the technique is Tunisian Mosaic crochet. This is a technique where we work with one color in a single row. We change color after every row. So every alternate row is made with the same color. You do not have a lot of ends to weave in because you're not cutting and rejoining yarn after every row. This is something that comes with Tunisian crochet because we start and end at the same point. Because of the forward and return passes, you will not have to cut and rejoin yarn, and you will be creating diagonal stitches, vertical stitches, long stitches. There are a total of 4 stitches that you will need to know for this, but they will be used in various combinations. So it does have a bit of a learning curve in the beginning where I teach you what stitches to use and how you can use them to create your Blackwork designs. Typically, Blackwork embroidery is created on an existing fabric. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but Blackwork designs are created on existing fabric, so the tension over there is all settled, at least in the fabric. But when you're creating Blackwork designs with Tunisian Mosaic crochet, you're building the Blackwork design and the fabric together. So that is going to take some work to make sure that your tension is settled and evened out. So that's about the technique. The skill level is intermediate. These stitches, as I mentioned, they're 4 stitches. You're going to need to know Tunisian simple stitches, Tunisian double stitches, Tunisian treble stitches, and then an extended version of all of these. So you need to know these four things. You need to know how to change color at the beginning of a row, and that's about it. And then it's all about combining these stitches, making them in different places so that you can get the diagonals and the right angles and all of that. Now, this technique very quickly turns into an advanced level technique if you use black yarn or a very dark yarn. So if you are making your first swatches, I strongly recommend using contrasting colors, but a lighter color uh, for both of the color options that you're picking. So when you're starting off, just to understand the technique, I definitely very strongly recommend not using dark yarn because it can get very frustrating very quickly. Now, there is a tip that I want to give you right now about working with dark yarn and black yarn, which is this. This is a reading light, and I can tell you for a fact that I would not be able to complete my blanket if it weren't for this. So I have used this at night, I've used this during the day, I've used this to make my entire blanket, and I could not have done it without this. I would not be able to see the stitches, see the loops and bars where I needed to insert my hook without the light being focused specifically on the stitches that I wanted to work with. And I think it was very, very helpful. So I strongly recommend that. I'm not an affiliate, so I'm not recommending a specific brand, but the one that I have is from Gloccent. So that's Glocucent. It's right here. I just picked one from Amazon. I don't know if it's available in the US or not. I was in Australia when I bought it. So just any reading light where you can focus light at a specific point, I think would be very, very helpful with this technique. Now, I want to point out that even though I qualify this as intermediate or even advanced with black yarn, the last cal, my IPSA blanket cal, I was so pleasantly surprised by how many beginner Tunisian crocheters were able to successfully attempt that cal. So there is no reason why you cannot try this, even if you're a beginner or even if you are doing Tunisian crochet for the first time. The way I create my tutorials is that I teach you things incrementally. So if you do things in small steps and you're able to understand and the small bits incrementally, you'll just end up learning the whole technique in small parts. So you don't have to do this massive thing all at once. You just learn small things, learn them incrementally, and you should be able to work on this technique. So I encourage you to try. And if you have questions, the community is there. I'm always there to answer questions. Now, the squares that this blanket is made up of are two sizes. There's the larger squares, which are a total of 25 large squares, and there are a total of 44 small squares that make up the blanket, and there is an additional square for practice. So that makes a total of 70 squares, and I went back to squares again this year. The squares were the best to work with this technique, especially in the beginning when we're just starting. So I think a lot of people wanted to see different shapes from me. I've received that feedback in the past, but I kept squares for this one, and it's just that this technique is best with squares, at least in the beginning. Now you have the option of making your entire blanket with all these squares, the large and the small. You could use just the large squares or just the small squares, or you could make it like mine, or you could create any variation, whatever variation you like. You don't even have to make a blanket. You can make whatever project you want and just go with it. So the practice swatch is a 4.5-inch square. That's the gauge that my practice swatch is. And I wanted to mention that the gauge is not really very important in this blanket. If you complete your practice swatch, you should be able to make all these squares. It's just the size of your blanket will be smaller or larger based on what your swatch size is, and it's completely fine for it to be different. The border also, as I mentioned earlier, is worked in a way that it will accommodate any gauge differences, so you don't have to worry about not meeting gauge. the size of my squares is that the large squares are 10 inches in size, small squares 4.5 inches. The border is 3 inches wide, and the blanket, the final blanket is 65 inches. So that's each edge. It's a square blanket for me, and it's 65 inches. Now, I wanted to stress on the fact that this technique is hard in the beginning. I recommend that you practice these stitches separately before starting your squares, because learning your stitches, learning how to create diagonals, combining your stitches, and reading charts, those are four separate skills that you will have to develop. And if you try to do all four together, that might be a bit much. So practice these stitches separately. Once you have those sorted, once the tension has evened out, then you should be able to work on the rest fairly easily. Now, tension plays a very, very important role in this blanket. You have to keep your stitches loose, not too loose, but loose enough so that you're able to pick up these stitches. And you will see this a little bit further. I'll talk about it more in my future videos, but it is important to keep your stitches loose. There are some tricky spots that you have to insert your hook in. And if your stitches are tight, then that will become very, very hard to do. And for your tension to set, practice is key. Just make sure that you practice enough so that when you are actually making your blanket, then or your final squares, then it is all settled and you don't have to worry about that. Now, developing this technique has taken me the longest compared to everything else that I've done before. I went through several swatches. I made small tweaks in the design, what stitches to pick up, what loops and bars to pick up, where to pick them up from. There were a ton of different options. As you know, Tunisian crochet, there's so many different options where you can insert your hook. And so I tried a lot of them, and that's when, after a lot of trial and error, I've settled on what I am sharing with you. And while I'm open to you experimenting with this, I recommend sticking to what I'm showing you in the beginning. And then once you have that figured out, then go out and try different things with it. But please, please, please take the time to read the instructions, which include the pattern notes, the tips and tricks, and going through the videos. It's very important because you're giving me a lot of your time. You're making a big commitment, and I take it very seriously, and I give you all the information that I think is important. A lot of it is there in the pattern document. So please read the pattern document. Please read the instructions on my website if you've not made a purchase. And once you've read everything, you can reach out to me with whatever follow-up questions you have so that we can get all the details sorted out in the beginning before you actually work on your blanket. Now, the yarn that I've used for my blanket is Hawthorne DK by Knit Picks or V Crochet. And this is a DK weight yarn, which is 8-ply yarn. And I think that's the perfect weight for the blanket. You can make this with any weight yarn, actually. But my blanket weighs over 2.5 kgs. This is the heaviest blanket I've made. It is mostly because you're making a lot of overlaid stitches, so the thickness of your blanket is double than what you would have in a regular Tunisian crochet project. So anything heavier than DK weight would make your project very bulky and very heavy, and anything lighter than that I think would be okay. But at least in the beginning, when you're learning this technique, it would be harder to execute the stitches. So if you wanted to use lighter weight yarn, that's okay, but practice your stitches with DK weight yarn or similar, and then try it with lighter weight yarn once you have figured the stitches out. Now, the yarn that I used, I've used Gold Hill Tonal and Blackbird Kettle. Now, I really like the fact that there was a slight variation in the Blackbird Kettle. It was not a solid black, which was extremely helpful in finding the stitches. I didn't realize that until after I made a couple of swatches, and that's when I figured that having that slight color variation and not having a solid black was really helpful. I would have had a much harder time creating my squares if that weren't the case. So What I'm trying to say is that if you're using solid black yarn and if you're struggling, then that's okay because it is hard. But working with black yarn is hard anyway, and if you combine it with a technique like this, it gets even harder. So that is why I'm saying this multiple times, that use a lighter colored yarn in the beginning so that you are able to figure out how to make your stitches before you use your dark yarn. That said, for your final blankets, you can pick any yarn that you like, any weight yarn. The pattern will not change. So if you wanted to use lighter or heavier weight yarn, that's completely fine. Once you figure out the stitches, once your tension's evened out, then pick whatever yarn you like with an appropriate hook, and the pattern will stay the same. Now, the yarn amounts for the individual colors are mentioned on my website. If you wanted to make a different number of squares than what the pattern mentions, then you are welcome to do so. I've specified the amounts of yarn that I've used for different for the squares and for different parts of the blanket, and you can go in and calculate how much you would need for yourself if you're going for a uh, different orientation or different number of squares or a different project altogether. Now, there are bundles available for sale for this blanket. There are 4 bundles which are available at a 20% discount on the We Crochet website. And they are, as of now, as of when I'm creating this video, there's an extended Black Friday sale going on, which has brought down the price by, I think it's 25% on top of what is on top of the 20% that's already discounted. So I have not seen this yarn uh, been available at a lesser price than this. So if this is the yarn that you want to use, this is probably the cheapest that you can get it at. So if you wanted to check that out, all of that is on my website. I understand that this yarn is not for everyone. You are welcome to choose whatever yarn you want, and I have some alternate yarns mentioned on my website, so you can go and check those out if you wanted to. Now, one thing that is extremely important when you're picking your yarn is to make sure that the colors don't bleed, because you're using two very high contrast colors together. And so it's important that they don't bleed. You don't want to find out later because that will ruin your project. So strongly recommend that you wash your swatches the same way as you would wash your final project, and then see how it works out. If the colors bleed, then you might have to use different yarn. Now, going to hooks. You will need a single-ended, non-ergonomic hook. It will be a long hook, one with a cord. So for your squares, you do not need a long hook, but for the border, you will need a long hook. I used a 6.5 millimeters hook for all of the squares and the border, and then I used a 5.5 millimeters hook, that is the traditional crochet hook, for the joining and the finishing. So now this is a large project and it requires a significant time commitment and work on your part. So please make swatches in the beginning. Make sure that you figure out the yarn is not bleeding. Make sure that you're getting a fabric that you like, because I think it's worth the effort. You're building something that is going to be cherished and passed down generations, hopefully, and you want to make sure that you uh, get past these small things in the beginning. They might take some extra time, but I think it's worth the effort. Now, blocking, I block all of my squares, and I recommend doing that. It's easier to store and it's easier to join with them. But I know it's not for everyone. I know not everybody does that, but I recommend doing it. And if you're using the same yarn as me, wet blocking worked best. So I just soaked my squares in water and pinned them on blocking boards and just let them air dry. So that's what I did. But if you're using non-natural fibers, steam blocking will work best. Now here's how you can get support for this CAL. So this is a crochet along. We're doing this together. There's a lot of people who are going to be working on this at once, which I think is great because we can all share notes. And there are so many new things that I learned from these CALs, which people figure out and experiment and teach. They're kind enough to teach me and share with the entire Knit and Otter community. So the Facebook group that I have is the best place to connect with such people. The community has grown over time. I'm really, really proud of it. I have never seen a question go unanswered. People get to the questions before I get to them sometimes. And because of the time difference, that really helps so that people are not waiting on me to answer something that everybody else can just together help each other out with. Uh, if you if you design your own squares, I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but if based on the previous two CALs, I've seen that a lot of people like to design their squares and they very generously offer them for free. So the Facebook group is a great place to show off those new designs. And also, I have dedicated albums in the group where you can share your designs and you can also go and see how the previous squares and hexagons that people have created. You can get inspiration for colors. You can look at what other things people have done. There are albums for completed projects. So not everybody creates blankets. They use their squares for other projects. So all of that is there in the group. The best way to, so that's all about my Facebook group. I understand that it's not for everybody, but there's a lot of fun stuff that happens there. So if you are on Facebook, I recommend joining the group. Now, the best way to actually stay updated on the CAL is to sign up for my emails. You can adjust the preferences. There is a manage preferences link at the bottom of all of my emails where you can choose what kind of emails you would like to receive from me. So you could unsubscribe if you don't like what you're receiving from me, or if you wanted to receive only information about the CAL, you can go to manage preferences and just change what you expect to receive from me, and I will only send you the information that you have selected. Now, video support. There will be comprehensive video support at every step of the CAL. There will be, I will be covering stitches, how to combine them, how to create diagonal stitches, how to read charts, how to add extended stitches to Blackwork charts. If you missed a download, or if you wanted to create your own designs, you can use that to create your own Tunisian mosaic patterns from that. There will be videos for joining, for the border, and for the finishing touches. So everything, there will be a video for every step in the CAL. And if I'm always open to creating new videos as well. So if there is something that people are struggling with, I am open to creating photo or video tutorials as needed. So I'm always open to creating more tutorials. If you have any questions, if there's something that you need help with, just let me know, and I will try my best to offer more tutorials as needed. Now, please note that I will not offer a video per square. That I just cannot do that. So if that is what you're expecting and that is what you need, then this CAL is not best suited for you. But I can assure you that the kind of videos that I offer, you should be able to use those and be able to read any chart that I offer in my patterns and be able to make your projects from it. Now, one more thing I'm excited about is I finally figured out how to create left-handed support videos. So the problem last year was that I was reading my instructions from a piece of paper, and when I flipped my videos to create left-handed versions of them, that just did not work out. So this year, there is no reading from a paper. I figured out how I can create videos by doing everything electronically. So the instructions, everything is on the computer. So I could easily flip my instructions to create left-handed videos. So all video support comes both left and right-handed wherever needed. Now that was a lot of information, I know, but the CAL is very extensive. I wanted to make sure that you understand everything before making this significant time commitment. With me, I want to make your journey as smooth as possible, give you all the information that I can in the beginning. And I promise that once you have all of what you need in the beginning and you've made a square or two, it will all start feeling better. It just is a lot at once. Just give it some time. Make your practice squares. Make a large square or two, uh, and let the information just sink in. And it will get easier, but I just wanted to set the expectation that this is going to be hard in the beginning, but I have everything that you need. I will give you everything you need, and I will be there to answer questions. Now, my CALs are always open-ended. You can follow the instructions in my patterns exactly. I encourage you to experiment with the technique itself, with the designs, with what you make with the squares also. You do not have to make a blanket. I really just want you to learn this new technique, enjoy it, and then make it your own. Get creative with it, create new designs, create new patterns. I'm always excited to see what everybody does uh, with the techniques that I share, and I just want you to enjoy. Just want you to enjoy making your squares. You can make just one square, you can make 20 squares, you can make 100 squares, how many ever you want. Just enjoy the process. Uh, you can you can just hang out in the group and see what everybody is doing before you start. I know lots of people have a lot of projects going on at once, and you don't have to jump in right away. Jump in when you're ready, but please share your work with us. I would, if you are starting one of my CALs or any one of my patterns, just make sure that you share photos. I would always excited to see what everybody is doing with my patterns. Now, again, I think I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself in this, but if people wanted to create their own designs and are willing to share them with the Knit and Knotter community, and if there are enough, I'm going to create a page on my website where I will give you a place to share your patterns if it gets to that, and I'll send out notifications if I do end up doing that. But please know that if you wanted to create designs and share them with the community, there I'm open to creating a web page where you can share it. Now that's about it. That's all I wanted to share about the CAL. All of the information is on my website. It will be in the pattern documents if you have made a purchase. If you've not, everything's on the website. I just request that you read everything, and if you have questions, please ask. There are no silly questions. There are no questions that should go unanswered. If you have a question, I'd rather answer it in the beginning than have you wonder throughout the CAL and not know what the answer is. So just ask questions, get comfortable with the technique, be kind to each other. That is extremely important. Uh, uh, that I think comes first. We have to be kind to each other in the community, and we have to enjoy ourselves. Those are the two things I ask for, and I really, really hope you'd enjoy this technique. And I, I'm just very excited to see your blankets or your Blackwork inspired Tunisian mosaic crochet projects come to life.